نبي بعده وعلى آله وصحبه ومن تمسك بسنته إلى يوم الدين وسلم تسليما كثيرا أما بعد. We continue with Surah Thalatha on this day is Sunday, October the 7th, 2:25 p.m. 2018 of the Gregorian calendar, which coincides, I think now, it is the 26th of Muharram, if I'm not mistaken. Please don't let this commercial come on my Muslim Pro. Which agrees now with the 26th of Muharram, Am 1440, the time of the year which is 1440 after the migration of Mustafa alayhi salatu wassalam. As we continue with Surah Thalatha, we stopped at the principle and ta'budullaha mukhlisan lahu ad-din. We stopped at the principle, it says that you worship Allah upon ikhlas. Or that you worship Allah alone, making a religion sincerely only for Him. And we said that these principles are of the utmost importance, because based upon that is the validity of everyone's actions. And without that, then one's action would be fruitless and rejected with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on the day of resurrection. For any action that we know that we put forth, in which we utilize it to draw close to Allah, that if it does not have sincerity in it, as we know, that's not only for Him exclusively, then that action will be habit, as they say in Arabic, habit, mardud. It will be fruitless, invalid, and will be rejected. So we said that this is from the most hardest of matters, and even the Salaf were very diligent in purifying their actions and making them sincere. Not only making them for Allah alone, as far as that which would be considered a tawheed in regards to what opposes it, which is the major polytheism, but also in the state or the circumstance of one being Muslim and being exposed to another plot in which we know that shaitan likewise utilizes to trick the slave, which is called Ar-Riya, which is showing off, which is another type of polytheism. But we know that the origin of it is that it's shirk al-asghar, that it's minor polytheism. But if one is not careful, it can definitely lead him down the road of major polytheism and nullify his Islam if one is not careful. But we know showing off is still considered shirk. And just the mere fact that it's considered polytheism, then it's incumbent upon the slave to have the utmost caution and be very, very careful of this action or this type of hideous act in which will be exposed on the day of resurrection that we talked about in light of the hadith, which we elucidated towards. Explaining, last class, what we said on the authority of Abu Hurairah, those three people that were exposed. They was exposed because they showed off, as we talked about last class. Those three people who did some actions were considered al-a'mal al-jalila, very noble, honorable acts, in which we said that the Messenger of Allah explained that on the day of resurrection, they will be the first of people who Allah Ta'ala on the day of resurrection will judge between, or their accountability, or their recompense will start, and they will be the first in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will judge. And from them, as we know, is that the one who died a shaheed, the one who died a martyr. And we know that Allah ta'ala will bring him forth. And He will make His ni'am, Allah will make His blessings and His bounties known to him. Until Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will ask him, what did you do with those blessings that I bestowed upon you? He said, I fought in your way until I attained martyrdom. I became a martyr. And the people will say, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will expose him. He will expose him and say, kadhabta, you're a liar, or you lie. However you fought, in order for it to be said, he's a brave individual. He's brave. And it was said in this world, in the dunya. And he will be commanded, and he'll be dragged on his face, and then he'll be cast in the hellfire. So notice on the day of resurrection, everything that one kept hidden and inconspicuous, where no one knew what was the intention, all of that will be revealed. As we know, the ayat that Allah Ta'ala says in His book, يَوْمَ تُبْلَى السَّرَائِرُ, that the secrets and the ulterior motives that people kept hidden, all of it will be exposed on the day of resurrection. All of it will be made known. So notice that this action that Allah Ta'ala, as a result of it, exposed these three people, all of it was some khalal fit tawheed. All of it was due to some type of discrepancy in the aspect of monotheism, because they showed off. The one who died a martyr, he died in a state where he did an action openly that looked as if it was what? Rather, it was an action that was honorable and noble and tremendous. But however, the intention was fasid. The intention was corrupt. Because he did it for other than Allah, he only did it in order to win or attain some type of praise from the creation. And we know also likewise the man that even learned the ilm and even learned the Quran, he recited it and he also taught it to the people. And Allah will make His bounties known to him and His blessings that He bestowed upon him. And likewise we said similar to what happened to the first. He will say to him, he will ask, what did you do with my blessings? What did you do with what I've given you of those bounties? Meaning of ilm, of knowledge, and also you reciting the Quran and also teaching it to the people. And we know Allah Ta'ala will ask him and say, what did you do with it? He says, I recited in your way, and I read the Quran fi sabilik, or I did it in your way, meaning for you exclusively. And Allah will expose him likewise and say, you lie. You only did it in order you only learned knowledge to only be said, he's a scholar. And you recited the Quran in order to say he's a qadi, that he's a reader or reciter. And it was said, he says it'll be commanded and he'll be dragged on his face and be thrown into hell. And likewise to the third individual who gave sadaqah, who gave charity openly. It seems that it was a tremendous action, rather it was a noble action, but however Allah Ta'ala exposed it due to the fact that the intention was corrupt. So ikhlas, ya ma'ash al-ikhwa, ikhlas and sincerity is a very, very, very important matter in which one has to examine and scrutinize before he does it, in order for him not to be amongst those on the day of resurrection who be exposed. For verily, one has to take in consideration, if he falls into showing off to win some type of praise of the people, that he's going to attain two things. Number one, he'll find on the day of resurrection that his action has been rejected, that it was unacceptable. And that is one of the most humiliating of circumstances, that one will come, that what he did, he put forth of an act where he rendered himself very weary and tired to do an action, and then you find on the day of resurrection that it was all fruitless. It was a waste of time. For you notice, brothers and sisters, in that particular narration of Abu Hurairah, the man fought in jihad. He fought in his cause of Allah, of what comes as a result of it, of exhaustion and weariness and tiredness, and one also sacrificing his life. Sacrificed his life, sacrificed his energy, exhausted himself, rendered himself weary and tired. All of that in order to be thrown in hell. That's humiliating. That's disgraceful. For a person would do this, and at the end, the final result will be a punishment. For verily, that shows the importance of ikhlas. To the point, like we said in the hadith, the Prophet ﷺ this man came on the day of resurrection. He came with putting forth noble acts. He exhausted himself, tired himself, until the point, like he said, the ultimate result was what? The action was rejected. And on top of that, number two, if you want to add on to that, he also received a punishment from Allah. All because of an action that he committed, in which outwardly it was a noble act, but due to the corruption of the intention, two affairs came, which the action was rejected, and he was also cast into hell. to let us know, ya ma'ashal ikhwa, the importance of sincerity and ikhlas in our actions. It is the most dangerous of affairs if one does not examine it and scrutinize it, and if he sees that it's deviating a little bit, then it's incumbent upon him to reevaluate his intention and put it back on course and put it back in its correct place. Because we do not want to be amongst those who Allah Ta'ala says in his book, عَامِلَةٌ نَاصِبَةٌ تَصْلَى نَارًا حَامِيَةً تُسْقَى مِنْ عَيْنٍ آنِيَةٍ. Because if one does not have that ikhlas, or like we mentioned in the last class, if he doesn't have mutaba'ah, following the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, if he doesn't fulfill both those conditions that we said last class, he will be from amongst those who Allah has mentioned in Surah Al-Ghashiyah. And Surah Al-Ghashiyah is a very, very frightening surah, where Allah Ta'ala says in the first part of instilling horror or instilling fright in the people, meaning making sure that you fulfill those two prerequisites in your actions, which is sincerity and following the sunnah and the sharia of the Prophet ﷺ, or else this can be you. Where Allah Ta'ala says, there are people working hard, amilatun nasiba. There are people working diligent and hard and exhausting themselves and trying to draw close to Allah. Listen to what it says in the ayah, in Surah Al-Ghashiyah. And despite of that, they will be burned in hell. It says, amilatun nasiba, wearing themselves out, doing actions which are weary and tired in order to draw close to Allah. However, they will be what? Burned in hell. And they will be given us drink from a boiling spring. Why, everyone? Because of the lack of ikhlas. Firstly, number one, because of the lack of iman. Number one, because of the lack of iman, of not believing in the final revelation. And even aspects of certain people who are Muslim. Whereas, if he does not have the monotheism fulfilled in that particular action, then likewise on the day of resurrection, he will come and he will have that action rejected. And like we said, it can also be a reason for the Muslim being even thrown into hell temporarily. If he died in a state where he was upon the correct iman, and also likewise, he was sincere in the rest of his actions and the remaining duration of it in which he was in this dunya. However, in certain actions, he showed off. As a result of it, he could be in hell temporarily. Then he'll be brought out. But he will have to be what? Purified. Because what he did was an action which is considered the most hideous of actions, which is polytheism. Because like we said, shirk is, or showing off, is a type of polytheism. As we know, showing off is a type of polytheism. So as a result of it, like we said in the last class, for a person has to examine and scrutinize his what? His niyyah. As we talked about the athar, what happened with Imam Ahmed. Well, Imam Ahmed, we know his student was the great Imam Abu Dawood, Sulaiman al-Sijistani, al-Azdi, rahimahumullah. As Imam Ahmed mentioned in the statement, he said, Shartun niyya shadid. Imam Ahmed said, Shartun niyya shadid. He says that condition or the prerequisite of having the correct intention, he says, is shadid. Meaning it's very hard and difficult. Meaning one has to struggle with his intention all the time. Then a student, who's Abu Dawood, said in a statement where he said, Katabtul hadith biniyya. He said that I used to write hadith with an intention. Meaning he would say this in order to remind himself of how important it is to make sure that I'm doing this for Allah. And what I'm doing it sincerely for Allah. So he used to write this when he used to write the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ. He would write this to remind himself, as a note to remind himself. Katabtul hadith biniyya. I wrote hadith with an intention. Also the great Imam Sufyan al-Thawri, as we mentioned last class, that he said in this tremendous, profound statement, he said, Ma alajtu shay'an ashadda alay min niyati innaha tataqallabu alay. He says, I have not treated anything more severe and difficult upon me than my intention. He said, verily it flips upon me. It flips upon me. And other than that, from the athar of the Salaf, in which we don't have time to reiterate, in which we said last class. But there's one athar I wanted to finish off in the chapter before we go to the next principle, which was a tremendous athar of Abdullah ibn al-Mubarak, rahimahullah, of what happened to him, rahimahullah. It's the athar on the authority of Abdullah ibn Sinan. It says, كنت مع ابن المبارك ومعتمد بن سليمان بطرطوس فصاح الناس النفير فخرج ابن المبارك والناس فلما انتصف الجمعان خرج رومي فطلب البراز فخرج إليه رجل فشد العلج عليه فقتله حتى قتل 6 من المسلمين وجعل يتبختر بين الصفين يطلب المبارزة ولا تخرج إليه أحد. The first part of Abdullah ibn Sinan, that he said that I was with the great Imam, and I'm sure that everyone has heard of Abdullah ibn Mubarak. As Abdullah ibn Mubarak, as Imam al-Dhahabi mentioned about him, he said, جمع خصال الخير كله. As Abdullah ibn Mubarak, rahimahullah, that you'll find that they said at the end, his history, that he said every characteristic of good he had. Abdullah ibn Mubarak. Every characteristic of good he had. As we know, Abdullah ibn Mubarak, he rahimahullah, was the scholar of his time. Not only that, Abdullah ibn Mubarak also had money. And also Abdullah ibn Mubarak also fought in jihad. Also Abdullah ibn Mubarak was known for standing up and praying at night. Abdullah ibn Mubarak also was known for fasting a lot. All the khisal of good he had. And Abdullah ibn Mubarak had money to the point they said that he used to spend it in the cause of Allah. So much in which the people used to find his good, that he was the one in his time gathering all between these different type of characteristics in which people would like to have. Not only did, like we said, he had money, but he was known, he was free-handed, he was generous. And he used to give it in the cause of Allah to make sure that the religion would go forth. So Abdullah ibn Mubarak, as we know, he also fought in jihad, rahimahullah. He says, in the people, فَلَمَّا اصْطَفَى الْجَمْعَانِ, he says, when he fought in a battle, and the two sides had gathered together in order to fight, he says there was a person from Rome who came out, and he requested that one from the other side, from the Muslims, he called him out to do a sword fight with him. They call it mubaraza. Mubaraza is when one individual comes out from the crowd and they ask for the other from the other side to participate in him or share with him in a sword fight to the death. So he came out. He says, فَشَدَّ الْعِلْجَ عَلَيْهِ فَقَتَلَهُ. He says someone from the Muslims came out, and that man from Rome, he came out and he started to fight until he killed 6 of the Muslims. All of that from the aspect of mubaraza. He says, and he started to brag and boast between the two ranks. And he was asking someone else to come out. No one, after he killed those 6 people from the Muslims, came out. It says, فَالْتَفَتَ إِلَيْهِ ابن المبارك فقال يا فلان إن قتلت ففعل كذا. Listen to how Abdullah ibn Mubarak used to check his niyyah. And this is connected with what we're speaking about, which is being sincere. He says, so Abdullah ibn Mubarak, he turned to me and he said, oh, so-and-so, if I'm killed, do such and such. He says, then Abdullah ibn Mubarak, he covered his face up. He said, ثم كتم وجهه بكمه ثم حرك دابته وبرز للعج فعالج معه العلج وبرز للعلج فعالج معه ساعة فقتل العلج وطلب المبارزة فبرز له علج آخر فقتله حتى قتل 6 علوج وطلب البراز. So Abdullah ibn Mubarak covered his face up with his sleeve. And he moved his riding beast to go fight in that bira or that mubaraza or in that sword fight or that duel. He says when he came to the man, they both started to indulge in the fighting. He said, for a moment, until the man who covered up his face killed him. Then he asked again for another sword fight from another from their group. He says, until someone came out, and it's similar to what happened to the first. Likewise, he killed him too. Until he killed 6, likewise from the other side. And then again, he asked for another sword fight. He said, فَكَأَنَّهُمْ كَاعُوا عَنْهُ. He says, to the point where even the other side, they started to become cowardly. And they started to say, no one wants to participate in that duel with him anymore. فَضَرَبَ دَابَّتَهُ. He said, then he hit, after it was finished, this person who covered up his face, he says, then he has struck his riding beast to now what? To go back. And he started to go between the two ranks. He says, فَأَخَذَ عَبْدَهُ ibn Sulaiman al-Marwazi بِطَرْفِ كُمِّهِ فَمَدَّهُ فَإِذَا هُوَ عَبْدُ اللَّهِ ibn Mubarak. He said, then the Abda ibn Sulaiman al-Marwazi, he said he took a part or the end of his sleeve. He said he reached out, that he took his hand and he reached out because he wanted to know who this man was, because no one knew who he was, who covered up his face, who also killed 6 from those who were in the fight, from the mushrikeen or from the kuffar. He says, I wanted to know who it was. So no one knew until when they seen that the man who had killed those 6 from the polytheists came down, and he wanted to see who this man was. So because he was still trying to hide. Until when he reached out his hand, he put it down. He said, I found that the man who killed those people was Abdullah ibn Mubarak from the mushrikeen. He killed 6 of them back after they killed 6 from the Muslims. He says, وَأَنْتَ يَا أَبَا عَمْرٍ مِمَّنْ يُشَنِّعُ عَلَيْنَا. As Abdullah ibn Mubarak said to him, he says that this Abu Amr, he said, because of this, he said, you have disgraced us. Meaning that you exposed me after I was trying to hide my actions. So then, this is from the Athar of the Salaf, how Abdullah ibn Mubarak was, rahimahullah. Which is to let everyone know how the Salaf were trying to conceal and hide their good deeds for Allah Ta'ala, and also trying to protect their niyyah and their attention, making sure it's not corrupted to the point where they will fall into something of shirk and polytheism with Allah Jalla fil Ula. Rahimahumullah. So after this sharh, as we finish this qa'idah, or this principle, if we go back and we talked about that you worship Allah alone, as the great Imam Shaykh Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab rahimahullah that he mentioned. That he said that you worship Allah alone, making a religion sincerely for Him. And that, from the explanation of it, everyone should know, after what we have just explained, the importance of sincerity. Because, like we said, from the people of monotheism on the day of resurrection, all of it will be examined, the people's belief system, and the people's intentions, and the people of what they concealed in their hearts, or what they concealed of ulterior motives. All of it will be exposed on the day of resurrection. And even the affairs of monotheism. As we know, all these 3 people, all 3 of the men who was cast into hell, is still connected with what, everyone? Is still connected with the belief system. So the first thing that everyone will be examined for on the day of resurrection is the belief, the checking of the heart, the examination of what was internalized. Internally in oneself. All of that will be examined first. So notice that what happened to the people who was thrown in hell, that was pertaining to some type of discrepancy in one's intention. Meaning, still connected with the belief system. The next qa'idah, if everyone looks in their books, the next principle. The next principle, if you look in your books, it says, وَبِذَلِكَ أَمْرَ اللَّهُ جَمِيعَ النَّاسِ وَخَلَقَهُمْ لَهَا كما قال تعالى وما خلقت الجن والإنس إلا ليعبدون. If everyone looks in their books now, we mentioned it said, for that reason, Allah Ta'ala commanded all the people, and He created them for this, meaning for ikhlas, making a religion sincerely for Him alone. And Allah Ta'ala says in His book, He says, I have not created jinn and I have not created mankind except to worship me. Meaning that you worship me and you unify me in my worship. So the next principle in which we're going to embark upon, matter of fact, we can even take the next one. He says, in the same principle, وَأَعْظَمَ مَا أَمَرَ اللَّهُ بَهِ التَّوْحِيدُ وَهُوَ إِفْرَادُ اللَّهِ بِالْعِبَادَةِ. And the most tremendous of what Allah has commanded is monotheism, which is to single out Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in His worship. So we try to take both principles all at once. For now, we start with, after the principle of unifying Allah in His worship, it says, because of that, Allah has commanded all of the people, and He created them for it. Allah, in this principle, of which the great Imam Shaykh Muhammad bin Abdul Wahhab rahimahullah, وَبِذَلِكَ إِشَارَةً إِلَى مِلَّةِ Ibrahim. So notice that when we were speaking about prior, before this principle that we took last week, we were talking about the millah, or the way of Ibrahim. That which we're upon is the same method and the same methodology and aqidah and belief and direction and methodology of Ibrahim. If you go back into the principle which we discussed, if everyone looks in their books and they flip back a couple of pages and look at just the principles, not the explanation, but the principles at the top of the page, it was talking about Ibrahim and how the way which we're upon, or one traverses upon, meaning this way, that is exactly what the meaning of Hanifiyya means. We discussed that for 2 weeks straight. And then we say that the Hanifiyya of Ibrahim is that you also worship Allah alone, making a religion sincerely for Him. Then now, if you look in this principle, what we're going to speak about now is talking about what, now this is what Allah has commanded us with, meaning all the people, and He created them for it. Just as Allah Ta'ala says, I've not created jinn and ins except to worship me. For number one, Allah Ta'ala has commanded all the abd, everyone, all of the servants, with an affair that's obligatory upon them. And from those affairs is number one, is that he has to attain, of course, ilm. As knowledge and worshiping Allah upon insight, and worshiping Allah Ta'ala upon this knowledge that He's commanded is what will be from the affairs which are praiseworthy in this world as well as in the hereafter. And is commendable. But worshiping Allah upon ignorance of one not reading and one not educating himself and not taking time out to deep root these principles in oneself is those affairs that will be reprehensible if one is not careful. Because in certain instances we can say ignorance is excusable, but as far as in these principles, no one will be excused. These principles, what we're learning now, no Muslim is permissible for him to be ignorant of. None. Certain affairs, yes, one can say, yes, I was ignorant, I didn't know. But as far as with the affairs that validate your Islam, you're not parting in it. You have to take time out to learn. And you have to take time out to rectify these affairs. Ignorance is not excusable in these matters of monotheism and knowing what Tawheed and Shirk is. It's not something that is easy. That's the reason why we highly emphasize to our people to what? To learn these principles. Because they are from the affairs in which one will not be pardoned for because of ignorance. He has to utilize, once he knows of the importance of these matters, he has to be very diligent in learning these principles. So number one, you'll find, like we said, in regards to the principle that we talked about, this is from the affair that Allah commanded all of the people. All of what we mentioned and talked about last class. We said that all the ibadah is built upon the ghayat al-hub ma ghayat al-dhul. Most utmost of love, or the most utmost of subservience and servitude, with the most utmost of love. That all the affairs of worship revolve around those two pillars, as we discussed last class. So keep in mind what we're discussing. Now everything else builds upon that. And that's what we're going to discuss now. So number one, based upon what we just said, Allah Ta'ala commanded the servant with a command in which is obligatory upon him, set 7 levels. 7. Those 7 levels, which we're going to talk about now. Number one is ilm. So verily, if you know, number one is knowledge. If you know that Allah has commanded you with monotheism, He has prohibited you from polytheism, then it's obligatory upon you to know what is what you've been commanded with, and what you will be asked for on the day of resurrection. Because we know that Allah is going to hold us accountable for certain things of knowledge and also our application of those at knowledge. That is going to be from those affairs that are also going to be examined and scrutinized, what we're going to be held accountable for. As we know the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, where he said, لا تزال قدم العبد يوم القيامة حتى يسأل عن أربع. He said that the feet of the slave, meaning that his recompense and his accountability, it will not stop until he's asked about four. So the first one it says, he says, number one, the Prophet said in this hadith, he said about his ilm. He says about the ilm in which he attained. لا تزال قرب العبد يوم القيامة حتى يسأل عن أربع. He says عن عمره فيما أفناه. Now just remember. وعن شبابه فيما أبلاه. وعن علمه ماذا عمل فيه. وعن ماله من أين اكتسبه وفيما أنفقه. وعن علمه ماذا عمل فيه. As we know, the Prophet ﷺ said on the day of resurrection that the accountability of the servant will continue, and he will be stopped at it until he's asked about four affairs. Number one is he's going to be asked about his age, meaning your time, what you did with it, your time. Your life is your time, and your time is your life. What did you do with your life? What did you do with your time? He says, عن عمره فيما أفناه. What did you do with your time? Then عن شبابه فيما أبلاه. One narration says about his youth, what did you utilize it for? What did you do with your youth? About your youth. عن شبابه فيما أبلاه. And about your wealth, where you attained it and what you spent it on. And about your knowledge, what did you do in application of it? So this affair on the day of resurrection is shadid, it's severe. Accountability on the day of resurrection is asking about our life, our time, asking about our youth, asking about our money, where we attained it, what we spent it on, and asking also likewise about our knowledge. And what do we do in accordance with it as far as its application? So number one of the 7 levels in which Allah has commanded the abd, with a command that is obligatory upon him to carry it out, we said is of 7 levels. The first one is ilm. Attain the knowledge of the knowledge he will not be pardoned for if he's ignorant of. A lot of people want to use this, say, oh, I didn't know. These, like we said, and I keep repeating it to show the high importance of it. This, what we're learning now, we're not going to be excused for this. This is an affair that's daruri, meaning it's like an affair that depends if your life could be lost. Meaning it's reached that level. That's how important the knowledge of the principles of what we're learning now. So the knowledge of that Allah Ta'ala commanded monotheism and prohibited polytheism, which is obligatory upon the servant. And to know what Allah Ta'ala has commanded him. And to also know what he's prohibited. That's the first level. I'm not going to go too much details in that. The second level is mahabbatuhu ma anzal Allah wa ma amara bihi wa huwa tawheed. To love what Allah has revealed. And to command, to love what Allah has revealed. And what he's commanded him with, meaning the slave, of what he's commanded him, and that is monotheism, of course. To love what Allah has revealed and what he's commanded with of monotheism. So it's incumbent upon us, men and women, male and female, that everything that Allah has legislated, that we love it, that we do not reject it, and we do not have any hesitancy in loving it, and knowing that everything Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has revealed and sent down is going to rectify the societies and the nations. Everything, without any exception. Everything that Allah has revealed in His kitab and in His authentic sunnah of His Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam is something that will rectify humanity, and it will bring them happiness in this world and happiness in the hereafter. Number 3 is al-azm ala al-fi'l. وقد يوجد من الناس من علم وأحب ولكنه لم يعزم على الفعل. Number three is that one has a strong resolve upon acting upon what he knows, of course, in accordance with that love. I'll say it again. The third is one having a strong resolve to act. Al-azm al-fi'l. To one have that strong resolve to act. Because there's from the people who have knowledge, and they do have love of Allah. However, they do not have that strong resolve. They do not have that strong resolve. They don't have that azm. The azm is like having a strong desire and having that strong resolve. Number 4 is the actions. As some people have a strong resolve or a strong desire to do something, but they still don't act. They have the desire. It might be there, but they still don't act. Number 5. Wow, time flies. Number 5, that the action has to also be sincere and in accordance with what the Messenger of Allah legislated. And we know the people between that are bayna, as they say, bayna al-tarafayn fi naqid. That a person, usually, they might fulfill one, but they leave off the other. Which as a result of it, the action will be rejected. He might be sincere, but it might not be in accordance with the sunnah, which will be an innovation. Or he might do an action that's been legislated, but it's not sincere. And in that case, his action will still be what? Rejected. Number 6 is that one have that hadr, that he's on that he's in a state of being on guard, of doing an act that will nullify his actions. Because we know that the righteous used to fear the invalidity of their actions due to something they committed and they didn't realize that they did an act or committed something that had nullified their good deeds. So a person is always on caution from doing an act of what will render his good deeds fruitless. What will render one's deeds fruitless? We know what will render it fruitless is oppressing people. Oppression. Oppression of what the Messenger of Allah ﷺ said in Bukhari. We know the hadith where the Prophet ﷺ mentioned and said about the man who will be brought on the day of resurrection. He says on the day of the resurrection in the hadith where it mentions, it says, I'm trying to remember, alhamdulillah, I just remembered it. It says in the hadith, it says, فَيُعْطَى هَذَا مِنْ حَسَنَاتِهِ وَهَذَا مِنْ حَسَنَاتِهِ. We can even go back a little bit more. Well, he says, مَا الْمُفْلِسُ فِيكُمْ يَا رَسُولَ اللَّهِ. He said, وَمَاذَا تَعُدُّونَ الْمُفْلِسَ فِيكُمْ. قال المفلس من ليس له المال ولا المتاع. فقال هذا ليس المفلس فيكم. إنما المفلس من يأتي يوم القيامة بصلاة وصيام وصدقة ويأتي وقد شتم هذا وقذف هذا وأخذ مال هذا وسرق مال هذا فيعطى هذا من حسناته وهذا من حسناته، فإن فنيت حسناته قبل أن يقضى ما عليه أخذ من خطاياهم ثم طرحت عليه ثم طرح في النار والعياذ بالله. The hadith in Bukhari, where the Prophet ﷺ says, what do you consider the muflis amongst you? Muflis meaning the one who has lost all of his money, or he's become broke. He doesn't have anything left or nothing, it's gone. What did they say when when he bankrupt? That's the word I was looking for. Muflis in the Arabic language, even linguistically, is used in the Arabic language to this day. Like a person, aflas fulan, meaning he's become bankrupt. Or muflis means bankrupt, literally. But at any rate, the Prophet ﷺ said, ماذا تعدون المفلس فيكم? What do you consider the muflis from amongst yourself? The one who's bankrupt. They said the one who has no money and he has no mata'. He doesn't have anything worldly, he doesn't have any money or wealth, nothing. The Prophet ﷺ clarified and said, that's not the one who's bankrupt from amongst you. The one who's bankrupt amongst you is the one who comes on the day of resurrection with charity, fasting, and prayer. He said, فَأَخَذَ هَذَا. Then he's going to talk about the reason of why all those actions became nullified or they've been taken away. Where he says, the Messenger of Allah ﷺ had mentioned and talked about instead of the reasons, where he now elaborated, where he said, فَيَعْطَى فَيَأْتِي فَقَدْ شَتَمَ هَذَا وَقَذَفَ هَذَا. That he insulted this one, and he hurt this one, and he insulted and criticized that one, and he insulted that one, and he oppressed that one, and he hurt that one, and he stole the money of that one. He stole the wealth of this one, and he didn't give the wealth of oppression to this one. He said then on the day of resurrection, when he's brought, he says it'll be taken from his good actions. All of what he did in this dunya, of those evil, on the day of resurrection, as far as taking the haqq of the people, it'll be taken from his good actions and put on their scale. Then the Messenger of Allah ﷺ said, and if the individual that fell into these actions, his good actions have ran out, he doesn't have any more, he says then in that instance, if he still has oppression, in which he's oppressed people, he says it will be taken from their evil deeds from those people, and it'll be removed from their scale, then it will be put on his. So if the person doesn't have good deeds left, then bad deeds will be removed from their scale and then put on his, and then he will be cast into hellfire. So it's not enough that we command and we do carry out the commands of Allah from the salat and siyam and sadaqah, but he's very cautious of doing acts that might render it fruitless. As we know the ayat which comes in Surah, it says in Surah Al-Hujurat, where Allah Ta'ala talked about the people who used to raise their voice amongst the Messenger of Allah. He says, أَن تَحْبَطَ أَعْمَالُكُمْ وَأَنْتُمْ لَا تَشْعُرُونَ. He said that you will raise your voice and you will nullify your actions and you do not know. You don't perceive it. You don't realize it. So the sixth level that we mentioned is said that a mu'min is always on guard of doing acts that will cause his good deeds to be what? Taken away. Whether it be of polytheism or whether it be of evil actions, of oppression and hurting people and insulting people and doing acts, like we said, which will come as a result of it, it will be lost. Listen to the seventh level. The seventh level and the final level. If Allah has given tawfiq to his abd, to his servant, after all these matters we just mentioned, number one we mentioned is what? Having knowledge. Then after that, having love of what Allah has revealed, loving it. Then having the strong resolve to act. Then number four is to do the action. Then number five is to be sincere and also doing an act that's been legislated religiously in our religion. And the sixth is to be cautious and on guard of doing something that would render what they did of good fruitless and null and void. And the seventh, listen to this one, everyone. The seventh is that to remain firm upon the truth and upon monotheism, and to have fear of dying in a state where it would be considered su' al-khatima, where it would be where he dies in a state where his last action was evil. Where he dies and the final ending of he ended, where his death was upon something evil. So that is the 7th level. And like we talked about on many classes, and many classes that we have explained, the thing of the people now these days is them being firm. It's not just the fact that people would embrace Islam, or that the people now have come to the religion to want to practice it. The thing that is important is that you remain firm and steadfast upon it. As a lot of people have been deprived of that particular matter. We know that our people one day are upon uprightness, then we see them start to slip, and then you find them have vanished and disappeared, and then you look up, where did they go? Gone. And that is all in which the Prophet ﷺ had mentioned in so many ahadith, giving us the cure. And those supplications in which he has taught us to constantly ask Allah to keep our hearts firm, because the heart, like we said, it flips more than a pot when it reaches its boiling point. That's how much the heart flips. And if Allah Ta'ala doesn't set it right, in which he wants to turn it to misguidance, then it will go in that direction. And if Allah wants to turn it to guidance, then Allah can turn it in that direction. So all the hearts of the ibad is between the two fingers of the fingers of Ar-Rahman. And we know that he flips it how he wills. For a person, like we said, in these days and times, these trying times in which I've seen numerous of people who have, as we want to say, lack of better words, fell off. I've seen so many people fall off. So many people in Saudi Arabia, so many people here in America, so many people in France, so many people in different countries who are upon Salafiyya one day. Either I get a phone call that they're not upon it anymore, or they're from the deviant sects where they now join the people of Takfir, or they join the Jama'at al-Ikhwan al-Muslimin, or they even left the fold of Islam, some of them. Left the fold of Islam. And some of them, or they have, like we said, have become extremely weak in their religion to the point they became like an outward sinner, a fasiq, in which he doesn't care. And you talk to them, you look at them, and the athar and the effect of uprightness is gone from them. And you sense that they're back in the street. And their lives are now become in turmoil. For no doubt, when a person becomes far away from the remembrance, he subjects himself more now to shaitan playing around with him. If I don't find anyone now that doesn't listen to classes or comes to the masjid or to be involved in some type of way to keep himself strong or him or herself strong by being in circles, except once they distance themselves, you'll find later on that they have now been subjected to the wolves where shaitan has corrupted them. And to the point, like we said, either they've left the religion or they join another deviant sect, or they become extremely weak to the point, like we said, you don't see the effects of istiqamah, or you don't see the uprightness or the profession of istiqamah being in their actions anymore. So we'll stop here, inshallah, and we'll continue next week. I think we summarize. I'm going to go jump to the next principle. Put a note on the marker where it says the most greatest, the most magnificent of Allah's commanded is monotheism. Is that you single out Allah in His worship. Put a note on it, everyone. We could take both of these. Some of these I could sum it up. Any questions about the lesson? Any questions about the lesson? I can't hear. What they say? Okay. جيد. هذا وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب